happening?
Yeah, wait, what
Because
did
it
you
was just
say?
kind of like, we're talking about this, like, and then this terrible thing is happening. I was just like, what? And then like a sentence later, it was like, and then whatever, the next thing.
Yeah. So you read it this time, you read it the physical book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's probably a different, I mean, obviously any book that you read slash or that you listen to, you're gonna interpret it in different ways, you know. So it's, you know, you've been listening to books,
Mhm.
been
Doing a variety
e-reading, and you've been physically reading, which I've stuck to physically reading this
the
whole
whole
time.
time.
Yeah.
I've definitely done all three of those. So the last couple, I feel like I had actual books, and the next one's going to be an ebook. So
Okay. Yeah, on the road. I think I'll probably, after the book I'm reading now, I might start that book. I don't know. We'll see. Probably kind
I'm
of dense. So I think it's probably going to take me a little bit longer to get through that book
yeah.
than most of these books. That's my guess. Okay, so full transparency, I have been going for the past week and a half. I had a 4-day trip and then I came home and within like 8 hours immediately went back to the airport. My husband
Oh,
and I,
wow.
we got on a plane to Seattle. Then we went out to Seattle for 4 days, came back on Sunday, came back Sunday afternoon. I had to unpack, repack, then go back to the airport for work for a 4-day trip that ended today. It ended
Oh,
this
wow.
afternoon. So I'm like, I'm
And you're
ready to,
probably tired anyway with the
yeah.
baby and stuff. So,
I mean, I feel pretty good, all things considered, you know. I'm like, I'm 6 months pregnant. I am you know, we walked a ton while we were out there. And then I was able to like basically just turn it back around and go back to work and manage to, you know, like stay awake in the jump seat while we're taxiing to the runway, which is like a
I
feat.
would have trouble.
I know, right? I was like, I'm gonna be in so much trouble because somebody is gonna be like, Julia's sleeping in the jump seat and you can't be doing that. I'm like, listen, you don't know
You
what I've
don't
been
need
through.
me.
I was on my baby moons. The last time I'm able to travel for a while outside of work.
Oh,
Let me have my fun, okay?
how long can you travel with work?
I can work up until 32 weeks, but I got an extension to 33 weeks only because it will allow me to take my vacation before my
Okay.
leave officially starts. So if I were to have started my leave at 32 weeks, and you know, given my doctor's note and everything, then they wouldn't have given me my at least 1 week of paid vacation. I think I had another
Oh,
week of paid vacation in August, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to do that. So
okay.
yeah,
All right.
it's okay.
Well, it doesn't have to be long. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's summer. We can,
Yeah,
oops,
it's still
just
light outside, so
dragged
it's
you.
hard to be tired.
There we go. I just sometimes I put it in gallery mode so that when it records everybody. But
Mm.
sometimes after it just like doesn't do that. When I look at the video later, I'm like, I literally pressed gallery and it's doing speaker.
Mm.
And so that's gallery. So hopefully that works. Okay, let's jump into it. Louise Erdrich Tracks is the third book I've written by Louise Erdrich. And probably the one I liked the least, honestly. The Sentence was really good, and then her other book I read, The Roundhouse, I thought was really, really good. Really like dove into the indigenous culture. I don't know how to honestly pronounce Ojibwa, Ojibwe, Ojibwa.
Oh, no, yeah.
I can look that up right now, actually. Because I want to be,
I read that. Oh, Ojibwe. Yeah, okay.
Ojibwe, and then it's also Chippewa. It's another,
Chippewa?
yeah, Chippewa is, I think there's the Ojibwa, Chippewa, or Salto, or an Anishinaabe people. And there's currently southern Canada, the northern Midwestern United States, and northern plains. So, how do I pronounce it correctly? Ojibwe.
Ojibwe?
Yes, according
Okay.
to,
Well, there's Ojibwa Nation that's in the
yeah.
beginning of the book, but Ojibwe. Okay. It's like, okay.
Or maybe, I don't know. It's usually the first sort of thing in the Wikipedia thing is how to pronounce something, but
Not in this one.
oops. This one says Ojibwe.
Ojibwe?
Ojibwe. Ojibwe.
Okay.
Yeah. So Ojibwe.
Ojibwe.
That's how we'll say it. Not how I've been saying it in my head for a really long time. So that's going to be interesting. Ojibwe. Okay, so she's Ojibwe. And so these novels that she writes are obviously based on Ojibwe culture, indigenous culture, Midwestern, like Plains Indians, Northern Canadian, Minnesotan sort of, oops, that tribe. I'm also I'm in a different room. I don't know if I was in a different room before, but we're getting the nursery ready, of course, so had to move everything in here. Still getting used to it, but it's working. Let's see where we want to start. I just have a couple of I just have a few questions, but is there anything that you wanted to talk about, anything that you were unsure about, questions or things that really stuck out to you about this book and what you
Just the two different narrators. I don't know if you felt the same way, like I liked one of them and the other one I was just like, what is the point of this person?
and you're referring to
Obviously,
Pauline, the one here.
yeah.
What's the point?
'Cause I'm like, just stop. And like the intro, like this, I stared at this for like a long time before I
Oh, I
started
don't
reading the
have
book.
that.
You don't have this?
No, that probably could have
But
helped me a ton. That's like a family tree.
yeah, it's a family tree, but I was literally like staring at it and I was like, this makes no sense to me. But now, like after reading the book, I'm like, yeah, okay.
No, I don't have a family tree in mine.
No.
Huh, darn
But they
it.
should have, like, there's missing dotted lines because when he hooked up with it was Bernadette, right? Or was it the other person? Margaret. Oh, never mind. It was Margaret. I got some of the names confused, and that's my bad too. But that often happens.
Yeah, like at the beginning of the book, I didn't know that the Pillager family, like I thought that was just a nickname for like a group of white people that were pillaging and plundering
Oh,
area. So it took me a minute to be like, oh, the pillager is a family,
a family.
an
Yeah.
indigenous family living, and they're all living in this area by the lake. So it took me a while to figure that out, which I think was part of Louise Erdrich's style, is like you figure out some things as you read. You know, you read something and you're like, I don't understand what this means, but perhaps she'll flesh it out later. And she usually did. So it was like for me to be able to take a mental note, or I guess I could have taken a literal note, but most of the time I didn't have my notebook with me. So I just tried to remember it and then
Yeah.
forgot it, and then, you know, had to go back and try and find where I had seen that and try and you know, piece everything together as I went. So, you know, she kind of just dives right in with these narrators because, you know, when you're writing as a narrator, there are things that the person who's listening to the narrator already understands that
Right.
the reader does not. And so it's kind of a puzzle trying to figure that out. And sometimes I was like, just tell us what this is like.
Yeah, I agree. Because I'm just like, okay, I guess we'll figure it out the next one. And then I'd see a Pauline chapter coming up, and I'd be like, oh no, what is she gonna do this time?
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, that was Pauline's character was definitely so strange, and we'll talk about her. I've got
Okay.
at least one question about her. So we can definitely, I mean, she's half of the book. Her narrator is half of the book. So she obviously plays a really important part, but
Right.
it's just so different from Nana Push's. From like, who was Pauline talking to? I'm not even sure who she's talking to.
Yeah,
You know,
I don't know if she's talking to anyone. Like,
I mean, like Nana Push is talking to his grandchild, to his granddaughter.
right.
But who is Pauline talking to? Is she talking to
I think
God?
she's probably like that's the only other character that it's like she thinks that she could. I don't know.
Yeah, she doesn't talk to anyone. Like she doesn't, you know, Nana Push is like, oh, my granddaughter, you are the child of the invisible, the ones who disappeared. But it's not really established who Pauline.
Yeah, I don't know if she's talking to anyone. It's like she's just like talking to herself because she doesn't have anyone to talk to. No one likes her.
Right, yeah, you know what? You're probably right. Like she doesn't have anyone, even the fellow nuns in her convent don't like her.
Because she's crazy. Not in the sense like I don't know, but like just putting their hands in boiling water and I don't know, not bathing and putting burrs in your outfit. Like I don't.
Yeah.
You
Reminds
said we'd get to her, so
yeah, for sure. Just like that very radical religious thinking.
yeah.
Is Louise does a really good job portraying that. And it's weird how how it transitions. Like she transitions from being somebody who prepares for dying people. She's preparing dying people for death, and then after death and all of that, and then just everything that happens. I don't know. There are a lot of sort of, how do I say, loose ends that that in my head I don't really figure out. Couple like holes in the narrative that maybe I have forgotten. That I just kind of was like, whatever. I'm not really like so invested in this story that I'm gonna go back and figure out exactly why this happened. I'm just gonna accept that it happened and move on.
Yeah. As an aside, do you normally take notes on your books? Because I've often thought about it, but I never do it. because I'm like, but I'm reading and
I
this is
know,
at school.
like, I know, I'm not
But I
at
think it would
school,
help
God.
sometimes.
But I really take a lot of pride in my notes. Like I I had a really amazing fifth grade teacher, Mr. McGuire, who taught us how to take notes and organize notes. And I literally thank him for like every successful sort of studying moment in my life because he just did amazing. So like the first book, The Joy Luck Club, man, I went to town. Like
Yeah.
there's so many pages devoted to this. I was like, oh gosh, like, I just have to write it all down. And that definitely had like an effect on my reading because I would stop and be like, okay, this is important. I need to write this down. And how does it connect with everything? Yeah, I devoted so many pages to the Joy Luck Club. And then it just sort of petered out. I did a lot for Mexican Gothic, and then the road, I was like, I'm not even going to take notes. I just want to read this book for what it is.
Yeah.
And that really helped me like just be in the moment and absorb the setting and the overall vibe of the book. So it kind of depends. I took a lot of notes with Everything is Illuminated.
Okay.
I took some notes with the personal librarian. It kind of depends. I don't think I took any notes with this book because I didn't have this with me.
Oh no.
I think I lost it for a time and then I finally found it. So yeah, but I like to take notes. And actually this book came a little bit pre-annotated. Like there's a couple pages that have been highlighted and then there's a little bit of notes that were taken on the back, which were really helpful. Like whoever wrote this, very good.
Huh.
Like it kind of helped shape my reading a little bit. You didn't take any notes?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Because I think if it's not for a test, and I know like we have to talk about it, but I feel like I just want to read it and see what I remember and see if it makes sense at the end. Like, a mystery, like I could probably solve the mystery in a book if I like paid attention to the details, but then is that really like, I guess that's not the fun of it for me, although it could be, I guess. I don't know. And really just haven't tried it.
Every mystery novel I read, I'm like, oh shit, that's what happened. Okay. Like I couldn't have predicted that, but
Yeah, so maybe it wouldn't do anything.
like if my grandmother, she loved mystery novels, but I don't remember if she was always like, oh yeah, I solved it, like way before the ending. I knew what was gonna happen. I don't know. Maybe some of those like older mysteries, the more formulated mysteries.
Sorry, the train.
These are all more notes that I took comparing between some of her this older book and some of her newer works. Let's see.
I liked the card game just because I've been playing cards with some of my coworkers recently. So it just was like
When Flores and Argus.
when they're like really, really hot
Mm-hmm.
and the cards are sweating and stuff. It was really easy for me to imagine that just because I've been playing cards
Yeah,
recently.
it was very like lush imagery for that
Yeah.
particular chapter. And then you kind of you have a feeling of what's going to happen. And she says it in so fewer words or less exactly what happens, and you're like, damn, that's
Yeah. Yeah.
what happens, and she doesn't really even say anything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Well, because it's like, does Pauline know exactly what happened? Like that's the thing, because she's narrating that part.
yeah,
So it's like,
it is. Maybe she doesn't explicitly want to say what it is.
yeah. Well, she can't talk about her other experiences very well either, so.
No, and she's a lot, like she lies a lot, she's not a very
Yeah.
reliable narrator. And there's one particular chapter that you're really like, she's a straight up liar.
Yeah.
I don't know which chapter that is, but
I was also thinking about her when I know, well, you said we'd get to Pauline, but I guess whatever.
we'll just talk
When
about her.
she like talked about how she knew the scent of death and whatever, but then she went to see Fleur and was like, I smell death here. And I was like, does she though? Like, I was like, is she gonna die? And then I was like, wait a second. She doesn't know anything.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Machimanito, that's the name of the lake, Machimanito. There were a couple of really nice passages in here. Before we go into some of the questions, I mean, the very first chapter was really the first chapter, the first paragraph, just really sets the whole story up. Like I read that a bunch of times. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there was another passage. Yours might be different pages than mine. Let's see if I can find the chapter at least. Mine is on page 177, and that is chapter 7, winter 18 to spring 19, skeleton winter, and this is Nana.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the last paragraph on page 177. It starts, power dies, power goes under and comes out.
That's mine.
Okay. Yeah, that was a really good paragraph. I'll just read it. Power dies, power goes under and gutters out, ungraspable. It is momentary, quick of flight, and liable to deceive. As soon as you rely on the possession, it is gone. Forget that it ever existed and it returns. I never made the mistake of thinking that I owned my own strength. That was my secret. And so I never was alone in my failures. I was never to blame entirely when all was lost, when my desperate cures had no effect on the suffering of those I loved. For who can blame a man waiting, the doors open, the windows open, food offered, arms stretched wide? Who can blame him if the visitor does not arrive? So there's a little, like I said, one of the previous readers of this book kind of summed up the main characters and says that Nanapush accepts his story and plight, has no power, but successful at controlling power, which is like, it took me a while to really understand what she was trying to say, but I got it when I read that paragraph. He accepts his plight, he accepts his story, he doesn't have any power, like he has this, people want him to what do they want him to do for the government, to be on some sort of board or something?
Oh yeah.
Which he ends up doing at the very end, but he doesn't want to do it at first because he knows every single time he signs something, the power is diminished. And every time you write your name down in a government document, like your power and your name.
Oh, right. That's why he didn't give the real name in certain places and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has no power, but he's successful at controlling power. And I can't really like pinpoint any particular part of the story where that happens, except for maybe at the very end when, he realizes that he needs to for I did stand for tribal chairman, as you know, defeating Pakwan in the last year. To become a bureaucrat myself was the only way that I could wade through the letters, the reports, the only place where I could find a ledge to kneel on, to reach through the loophole and draw you home. I mean, he one of the biggest reasons he did that is so that he could bring his granddaughter home from
Mhm.
school.
The government school.
Which, we know how the government schools treated Indigenous children. It was like absolute hell. So your father, yeah. So he ends up
I actually
joining
don't know much about that,
the
but that's why I
government
have to.
schools.
Yeah, I still have to go to the Museum of the American Indian. There's 2 places.
I mean, I'm no expert, but there's like as soon as the kids were admitted to school, their heads were shaved, and in Indigenous culture, like your hair is part of who you are. It's an extension of you. It's not seen as something like it's not seen as like a vanity or something exterior. It's a part of you. That's why a lot of Indigenous people wear their hair really long and always have them braided, because it's like considered an act of love to braid somebody else's hair. It's considered like it's just considered a part of you, sort of like dreads, how cultures dreads are an extension of themselves, and they're considered sort of like holy, and they have like a personality, sort of. It's like that. So to have an outside culture just know that and strip children.
Choose to ignore it because they're like,
Yeah, well, I mean, just
diseases.
to say like what your beliefs are dumb, and we're gonna do the thing we're gonna do the thing that dehumanizes you, sort of like the Holocaust. I mean, in the
I
Holocaust,
was just thinking that.
yeah, they dehumanized everyone who walked through those doors. They shaved their heads. It had probably had a more psychological effect on women than it did men. But they did, they did both men and women, and it allowed everyone to be pared down to like one unindividualistic like person. So it's the
You're
same
all the same. Yeah.
it's the same thing with the schools, the government schools. They brought in all these Native and Indigenous children, and they shaved their heads. They put them in colonizer clothes, told them they couldn't dance anymore. They couldn't do any of their rituals anymore. They had to become white. And so this was sort of like the time frame that this is happening in the early 1900s was probably a really significant time for the Indigenous community. And we read about it in the book, all of the sort of this omnipresent white pressure to timber the land, to strip them of their resources. And then in their times of need and their critical need during the harsh winters, the government is supposed to provide them with, necessities like food and warmth and clothing and stuff. And obviously there are a couple of instances during the winter where some of these people think they're going to die because they're starving.
Yeah. But then they got turnips.
So there's that whole problem there where, okay, my mother just texted me and said, "Oh darn."
Did you believe that like the guy, he made the meat coat?
Who was
and
that?
like froze on him? Was it Eli?
A meat
I think
coat.
so.
See, that's one of those things where I'm like,
He like wrapped meat all around him and then it like froze on his body as he was like walking home.
This was obviously in the winter.
Yeah.
He did it to survive.
Yeah.
Like did he kill
Like an elk or something.
yeah. And yeah, I just read the sentence, "We'll chew twigs tonight."
Yeah, that one was not good.
Um,
And then they had like a perch, a dried out perch or something. I don't know what it was.
yeah, they had a perch and it wasn't, they couldn't eat it. Yeah, I remember hearing about that, or not hearing about it. I remember reading it. And maybe he was like going crazy. I feel like I'm close.
That was some, yeah, it was hard to know what reality was.
Yeah, because there is some folklore that's
Mhm.
integrated throughout, especially with the man in the lake.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look for that little section of Eli with the meat coat.
I mean,
See.
I'm not sure it's that important, but
Yeah, I know.
it definitely made an impression on me. Because I was like, would that work?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, all my like preliminary notes are just sort of stream of consciousness type stuff. But honestly, like the thing that did rouse me the most was reading Pauline's narrative and just like how sad it was to watch her transform into sort of like a shell of a person, because of religion, because she was so radicalized by a white colonizer ideology, and to become
But it
so,
didn't, but the ideology was not even, it's, well, maybe it was taught this way, but like she still was like a terrible person.
yeah.
Which I guess, I mean, that's saying something about religion, but it just was like, you're not realizing that you're lying, that you're like, you killed someone and you're letting someone else take the blame. Like,
And you poison, or you not poisoned them, but you gave them a drug to to get in the way of someone else's relationship,
yeah.
you're meddling in people's affairs,
Oh yeah, like
in the name of
majorly.
God. And
Yeah,
just
it was very strange.
so that part I was like really interested in, because I'm sure there were indigenous people who were like radicalized by the Christianity religion, and just sort of became radicalized by it. Like you have uh you have white colonizers coming in and saying your beliefs are they're, what's the word I'm looking for?
Just wrong.
Wrong.
Uh,
Savage. Like
yeah.
savage. There's no like basis for why you believe what you believe. However, Jesus Christ lived and died on the cross, and we believe in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Join our, come to the Christianity side, and we'll prove to you that this is the one and true religion. And there were indigenous people and indigenous cultures that like wholeheartedly bought into that because of how dangerous the Christianity, obviously we know, as we know, so many cultures around the world were subjected to white Christian colonization, and we're still feeling the effects of it today. And it's like one of the most powerful things that we as a human society have ever done is just pushed a Christian narrative onto people we considered to be less than or needed to be saved. And so Pauline is sort of like the embodiment of that movement. Like she starts off, she identifies as, I think she's half.
Yeah, but she looked
Indigenous.
white enough or whatever. Yeah.
So she's half Indigenous. And what did you just say?
She looked white enough to like pretend, because with the nuns, they were like, they can't have. And she was like, well, I talk to God and I'm not.
Yeah, so she's white passing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she's another like duplicitous character. Like she still has that Indigenous blood in her, and a lot of the times in the book she's like pushing it aside, even though it's always in her. So it's sort of like the angel and the devil on her shoulder telling her what to do, and eventually it becomes her Indigenous part becomes so suppressed that she sort of just denies anything other than, I'm a white Christian nun and this is
And
what
I
it
must
means to
suffer.
be true and right, kind of thing.
And I have to suffer.
And I have to suffer, like I am proving my worth to God by constantly suffering and subjecting other people to harm.
Just suffering. True. That's what she decided. And that whole boiling water incident, I was just like, what are you doing? And then she's like, God turned his back on me. And I was like, no. He expects you to use your brain. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and then the whole boat incident, like she's on the boat and it's sinking and she's just like, help me, God, like,
And people are like, stop doing this.
Yeah,
and she's just like, no.
you literally are crazy. She's like, no, I'm not. God is gonna help me. And they're just like, this is so sad.
Yeah.
Like, look what they're doing to you, Look what you're doing to yourself, and look what they're doing to you, and look what they're doing to everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get into some questions. So we have these two narrators. We have Nana Push, who is obviously fully Indigenous. He embraces his Indigenous culture, community, and he feels the suffering of his community at the hands of the white colonizers wanting to come in, timber the land, change it to something else, and push them all onto reservation land, which was happening all across the nation at the time. Indigenous communities and societies getting sort of corralled into these government mandated spaces. And then you have Pauline as the other narrator. So just curious, like, why do you think Louise Erdrich chose Nana Push and Pauline as the narrators, being these two like very different people living within the same time frame?
I mean, it's just two like vastly different perspectives, I guess.
Yeah.
And like we already talked about, just her narrative is just like a damage in itself.
I mean, do you think it would have been better if it was like Fleur? Like, did Fleur have a better narrative to tell? Or, I mean, what was
I
maybe the
I don't think
reason?
she would have talked to us. She didn't seem to be too interested in that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. She wasn't interested in talking to the outside world because
Mm-mm.
why would she?
Yeah. So no, I think she picked two people who would talk about it.
Yeah, that's a good answer, I think. She picked two people who would talk about it. One is
Had
talking
stuff to
to,
say.
huh?
They both had stuff to say, although one was more nonsensical. That was all.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe, you choose a sensical and a nonsensical one. And you have these parallels between the stories that match up, but they don't really match up. Because
Yeah.
one is like, I mean, obviously, everyone has their own perception of an event that happens, so it's kind
Yeah.
of interesting how she did that. We've talked about Pauline quite a bit, so we'll come back to this question in a bit. So, let's talk about the times where they were all going hungry, what led them to these particular moments of despair? Like, what exactly was the cause of this hunger, besides the fact that they're living in a sort of really intensely cold place, right? Northern Minnesota or southern Canada. It doesn't really, I guess, I tried to look up a lake.
I thought it was North
Actually,
Dakota.
Oh yeah, South Dakota, you're right. Or North Dakota. Is it North Dakota?
North Dakota, yeah.
Oh yeah, North Dakota. It says it right here.
Because they
So
have some family
obviously
in Canada, but
North Dakota is a cold place.
I mean,
And
we've seen Fargo, right?
in the winter, like, why would anybody live there now? I mean, now I don't know anyone in North Dakota. That's one of the only states I've never been to is North Dakota.
I don't think I've been either.
So yeah, exactly what led them to these seasons of just extreme hunger and desperation, where they kind of like go mad a little bit because of it.
So I remember him talking about like back in the day, we could see, all the bison as far as the eye could see, and there's plenty, but they were all like gone now because even they knew that it was the end of them. And I was like, that's so sad. Do you remember reading something about that?
Yeah, I do.
Like that they were also depressed?
Like the bison.
Yeah.
Yeah. They knew what was coming, their ultimate demise. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of famous pictures of of white men with just a pyramid of bison skulls that they just, for why, like why did they do that? They
And I
didn't.
think they also,
What's that?
sorry, continue. I was just saying, I don't think they used all the parts
No.
of the bison, like, so it was very wasteful.
It was intentional. It was intentionally wasteful. Yeah, it wasn't like the indigenous people who were very tactful in what they killed, and then also very resourceful, using all the parts, making sure that they were giving thanks
Mhm.
to the animals that they were killing, giving them a source of food, a source of warmth, and structure, things like that. Whereas the white colonizers came in and said, screw it, let's just kill a bunch of bison because we know this is the indigenous tribes' livelihoods. And, and they just started killing off these bison for fun, for trophy, for bragging rights. I mean, the list goes on and on, but it wasn't for, survival purposes.
Yeah, I don't approve.
Uh-oh, I have a lagging time on my computer.
Oh, it was a moose. I found it.
Oh, okay. Okay, now it's caught up. So which page is that? There's a lag time on my computer. Let me get off my Wi-Fi. Maybe my husband's
104.
Garrison, get off the Wi-Fi. $104.
Get off the internet,
Seriously.
like my mom used to say.
He glowed, for the meat strapped to him had frozen a marble blue. Blood from the moose was flour on his coat and on his face. His features were stiff, strength in his limbs near exhausted. I freed him from the burden he held to his chest and carried it home in my arms. He followed. I severed it from Eli's body and stashed it outside in the lean-to. Oh, yeah, 103. So he killed it with a gun, right? Yeah.
But that still ran out that winter.
The shot was good and the animal was dead.
Mm-hmm.
He butchered carefully, but as fast as possible, according to my instructions. Yeah, I mean, when you're so like crazy for food, like it's got to be a really difficult thing to know that you can get food and you just have to be absolutely perfect in executing this act. But he does it. Right? He brings it back and Nana Push puts it in the meat locker.
Yeah, and don't spoil the meat.
My hands shook as I prepared the pieces with salt.
What do you think liver sprinkled with tobacco tastes like?
What's that? Garrison! Get off the Wi-Fi! I'm off the Wi-Fi.
I said he sprinkled liver with tobacco.
Tobacco?
I wonder how that is.
Argue on the Wi-Fi. Because it's very slow right now.
It's not my earbuds, is it?
Usually doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me okay? Thumbs up if you're hearing me okay. Yeah, it's like you're talking and I don't hear anything, and then
I wonder if it's me,
like
because my computer's slow.
this garbled sort of robot-y sounding. Yeah, so have you watched the TV show Yellow Jackets? So it's a girls, no. It's a girls soccer team that their plane crashes on the way to a soccer game and they have to survive in like the Canadian Rockies, this crazy Canadian Rockies. And of course, like it's during winter, or a part of the show takes place in the winter, and they obviously need to eat. And so some of them get trained to go out and hunt and what to look for and things like that. And like the delirium of like intense hunger is obvious. It drives people to do things that they would never do, like cannibalism. So you can imagine, like, for this to happen in this sort of like dead of winter scenario, you just have to be absolutely perfect. And eventually they eat some of it.
Yikes.
My hands shook as I prepared the pieces with salt. My mouth watered as I put them in the fire, and at the smell of meat roasting, I almost wept. I gave the first cut to Eli, who fell on it gratefully as I put my share into my mouth and as I swallowed it. I felt myself grow solid in the chair, lit by the burning stove. Everything around me sharpened, thoughts returned. Like, they were living such a clouded existence, and then they finally get some meat in them, and it's like a renewed sense of that everything's going to be okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm thinking maybe it might be my computer.
He was only 19 when he did that. Eli.
Yeah, that part was interesting that he went for Floor so young.
Yeah, that was a good part of the book. Yeah, so this desperation that they feel, probably in my mind, a lot of it has to do with the government and their inability to provide those rations, because they do talk about the government rations that they're supposed to receive that they never do,
Mm-hmm.
because who knows why. It's probably a litany of problems. And so they're sort of forced to go hungry when so much of what they need has been taken from them. Even like the lake, they talk about the lake not providing them with any fish, but they kind of blame that on folklore, I think, don't they?
Yeah, the man in the lake.
So yeah, like that whole time during the winter, it was always very difficult, sort of challenging to read that, because they're just were so hungry. All they wanted was to eat, and they were forced to eat twigs and leather and
Mm-hmm.
moccasins and stuff. It's like hard to imagine what that must be like.
And they didn't really do anything else. It was just like sit and suffer.
Yeah, they were sort of trapped. I can't imagine how much snow was on the ground, but it must have been quite a lot. Of course, they didn't have like the resources that were available to white people during that time, early 1900s, cars, early model cars. I don't think they have horses. I didn't hear anything about them
Mm-mm.
having horses. Or traveling by horse. No. Okay. So throughout this novel, we have this sort of background noise, background pressure of white people wanting to take their land. It's mentioned several times throughout the book, and then it really comes to a head at the end, sort of the climax of the story, where they come in and they're gonna take their land. They're gonna timber the woods. They're gonna turn the land into something that is profitable for them. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, this is a really sad situation for Nanapush and the pillagers and I can't remember the names.
Cashpaw,
Cashpaw, pillagers, and
Morrissey.
Morrissey. Yeah, so this situation they find themselves in at the end is really sad. So, like, how would you describe this situation, like, in relation to history? How does it compare to what we know about indigenous tribes, indigenous lands being slowly taken away and pared down to these just little plots of land that they're forced to live on and still have problems living on today?
And they definitely alluded to that in the book, like stop just drinking and whatever, like do something. But no, I think it's just a much more personalized tale of that situation. Like we all know what happened, but to like see it from the people who lived it, like it's
Yeah,
not good.
it's just one of many
Right.
stories. It's just
Yeah.
this one particular viewpoint, and there's so many viewpoints on how we got from where we were with a nation of predominantly native cultures, native peoples, and all of a sudden it being them living on these very small little islands, so to speak, of reservation land.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it's like the idea of goalposts, like the goalposts were getting constantly moved for them. Like they knew what they needed to provide. They knew the amount of money that they needed to pay for their land and to keep their land, and they did that. They came together. What was it that was it Fleur who discovered what they could do to make that extra money?
Yeah, like they did it all, then they didn't get the receipts.
Yeah, and then it ended
And
up,
the
oh,
guy who
but you
paid didn't
actually owe
do
this
it.
amount of money.
But the guy who paid also didn't do what he said he was going to do. So it's like pain from every side.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. You could listen to everything we do and do everything correctly, but we already know in our minds what we're gonna do, and so it doesn't matter what you try to do, because we're already gonna do it anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just gonna make it super challenging for you. And even if you rise to the challenge, which we don't care, we're still gonna do it anyways. And so they came back and said, oh, you actually owe us this amount of money and you did this wrong, and it's too
She
bad,
didn't
so
fill out
sad.
this form.
Yeah, too bad, so sad, we're the government. We
Mm-hmm.
we can do anything. So I thought that was an interesting, sort of just one little sliver, one little story in a story of many people
Mm-hmm.
experiencing the same situation, which was so sad. Them just trying so hard to keep their land and doing everything in their power, and it just didn't matter.
Yeah.
And then there's the importance of the lake itself, Lake Machimanito, which I don't think is a real lake. I tried to
No.
look it up.
Might not be. Machimanito. I'll look on my phone.
Oh, you know what? Machimanito. There is a Machimanito municipality. It's spelled differently, and it's in Canada. And it's in the Quebec province, like way north of Ottawa, in the middle of nowhere, really. But Machimanito, it's hyphenated. So, but in North Dakota, I don't think
Not in North Dakota, yeah. Interesting though.
I'm looking at the lakes. Fort Peck, which is definitely not an indigenous name.
Well, what did she say in the beginning? There was something.
Devil's Lake.
Oh, she said nothing in this book is true of anyone alive or dead. I thought that was interesting.
The little blurb she has at the beginning.
Yeah, like in the very beginning.
Nothing in this book is true of anyone alive or dead, which is kind of like a different way of saying what so many people say.
Yeah.
Anything that you think happened is pure coincidence and is not reflection on real life events or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I mean, like, it must be based on some.
Yeah, I'm sure. An area up there.
There's a lake called Devil's Lake, which could, but in my head, I don't really know how big the lake is. Lakes can be pretty small to, like, you can't even see the coast or the beach on the other side.
I liked the part when it was Margaret and Nanapush in the boat, and he was like, I didn't fix it. And she was like, no. And she was like bailing water the whole time.
You idiot.
So that kind of gave me some perspective on the size of it, just like that you'd be able to make it across.
Yeah, how did you not fix the boat? Now we need the boat, and my arms are tired. Yeah, like Louise Erdrich, she always incorporates a little bit of humor into the stories, a little bit of human.
And I did like the Nanapush, like found someone to hang out with. Like he was a little sad, so
You mean him and Margaret?
yeah.
Finding Margaret, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this Lake Machimanito, what were some, like, important aspects of the lake? What parts in the story were told that reflect sort of their reliance on the lake for you know, obviously they live in close proximity to the lake. What does the lake mean to them as a people?
Do I have any thoughts about that? I mean, it tried to kill people, a few people.
Yeah, it's a source of fear.
Yeah, and people saying like you won't live through it, but well, this was Pauline saying it, but Fleur did. Yeah, it's definitely a source of fear because I'm just reading I'm reminded of like the lake monster or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
So
yeah,
fear and folklore, which are usually, fear and folklore are usually pretty intertwined. You know, there's usually a story, a fable behind a tale or piece of folklore, because you're trying to tell people, don't do this,
yeah.
or you'll end up in the lake, or you'll be eaten by the man in the lake or something.
Which then a couple of them tried to do.
Yeah. But I mean, the lake, it's a sense of fear. It's a food source, obviously. You know, Fleur goes out a couple times to bore a hole into the lake to go ice fishing, and she's not
Mm.
successful, but then she is successful, I think. She's successful towards the end, or she gets like a lot of fish. Again, it's like,
Not remembering that part, but I'm really only remembering the one perch recently. But yeah, I'm having some recollection of that maybe. That she got a bunch of fish.
and it's a source of livelihood for them as well. I don't know. I was hoping the lake would have a little, it does have a lot of symbolism in this story. Especially with the folklore. I think that's the most important part, is that it provides a sort of surrealism to the story with the man in the lake, and like Pauline going out there in the boat thinking that she's going to be saved.
Oh, the lake's a shortcut to
Yeah.
the other side. So it was a way for Fleur and Eli to be kind of away from other people. And so in order to go to them, you had to go through the lake if you,
Right.
needed to get there fast.
In the winter you can just walk on it, but you'd have to cross it by boat, and whenever the lake is not frozen or not frozen enough to walk on. So even like different parts of the year, it serves different purposes and provides different resources for them. It'd be cool if we could see where this potential lake actually is, so I can get like a better
I'm just looking at a map of North Dakota.
I was on my phone, I think, yeah. I mean, there's a Lake Sacagawea, but it's actually
The town of Argus, is that real? Because maybe we could find it that way.
Argusville.
Yeah?
Yeah, there's an Argusville
Oh, yeah.
with a really small airport. I think the runway is actually oh no, it's right next to the road. I was gonna say, is the runway the road? But no, it's right.
Oh, it's outside of Fargus. Or Fargo. Why did I say Fargus?
Fargus. Yeah, Argusville. So it's literally 4 squares of land.
Oh yeah.
How can anyone live here?
First, second, third, and fourth and fifth street. Yeah.
Fargo. There's
I don't know.
I mean, all of this now, she talks about North Dakota as being a land of trees, of timber, but looking
Hmm.
at it now, there's no trees.
No, totally destroyed. If
It's
you
all
so
farmland.
in Oregon, Oregon was also covered in trees, like mature forests and all that. It's
Yeah.
like clear cut. So it's nuts to think about what our landscape used to look like.
So yeah,
For what?
just across the state line into Minnesota, you can see how they took better care of their forested land, not immediately, but as you make your way east,
Yeah, there are the darker green.
you can see
Yeah.
that that's all, which it probably could extend, all the way through North Dakota, but gosh, they just, yeah, that's crazy that they talk about this landscape that's all trees and lush forest and everything, and it was all timbered and turned into farmland.
Hmm.
That's crazy. I
And
didn't
who
really,
wants to have a farm in the bitter cold? Like it's crazy. It's all around. Like, what are
I
you
didn't even
doing?
really think about that while I was reading it. Like, oh, this is what North Dakota is supposed to look like.
But do you know who did it?
Who?
Well, I mean, my grandmother was born in South Dakota, so probably the immigrants from Germany and wherever else.
Well, yeah. I mean, they
It's,
probably saw it as really fertile land.
and they're like, we're used to this
Yeah.
temperature in Germany, whatever.
It, it's fertile land and it's good for whatever they do. I don't know. Cows?
Yeah,
Cow? What kind of farms you think? Cow farms?
probably livestock. Because yeah,
Livestock?
you're not really going to be able to grow too much. Like if it's so cold most of the year, what kind of farms can you do? Really should go to North Dakota though and check it out sometime.
I know it's like one of maybe I just was in Washington finally. That was the first time I'd been to Washington.
Really?
I know, crazy.
It's
I
wild.
don't know how I've never been there before. I mean, maybe I have in my youth, like my parents took me there, but I don't recall
Hmm.
being there for anything substantial. But yeah, Argusville, there's a Happy Trails Tavern where all the locals hang out.
Oh yeah, I saw that too. Happy trip.
Oh, it must be so awful to live there. Sorry.
We'll just have to go on a book club adventure to North Dakota.
Go on a book club tour to France and Ukraine and Beijing and yeah, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
have to do all that. That's fine. Mexico, we'll do it.
sure.
Yeah, we'll do it.
After the baby.
Yeah, right after the baby though. All right. You good? You good, Harrison? I'm gonna go now.
Got places to
I
be.
got places to be, and then we can go back in time to the 1800s for Kindred. 1800s in Maryland.
I don't really need to do that. That was very traumatizing.
We're good.
I'm looking at the land, like there's the fort, there's a reservation in the west, and there's one up by Devil's Lake,
Yeah.
but like that's it. Like, am I missing more? And then there's the one that goes into South Dakota,
Spirit
Standing
Lake
Rock Reservation.
Reservation. That's one.
Yeah, like that one seems
Fort
kind
Berthold.
of big. I don't know.
Hmm. This area, Fort Berthold, actually looks kind of cool. Like
Yeah, with the water.
it's a little
That's
bit
pretty cool.
rocky, a little bit like it's got some terrain.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's beautiful out there. But I don't know. I don't know how we get along because it's like it doesn't seem possible to be like, you do you and I'll do me. Nope, I need to have what's yours and I can't stand it.
Hmm. I thought maybe North Dakota was the least populated state, but it's Wyoming.
Ah,
Which I mean, I lived in Wyoming for a while. I can't believe that Wyoming is, well, everyone's sort of
really?
concentrated in really small and concentrated in
Wyoming's the least. I think I saw something about like why does Wyoming have so few people, but one of the other neighboring has more or something, and I didn't read the article. It was not good.
Colorado. So
Maybe.
Wyoming is the least populated with 580. Then North Dakota is the fourth least populated with 811,000.
Wait, 580. Okay. I was like, wait a second.
Only 580 people. Yeah, no, sorry, 580K. 580K. And then
Okay.
North Dakota's 811K. Yeah. That's
Everyone gets two
Vermont.
senators.
Vermont is the second least populated.
Really?
They only have 648. We're learning so much.
That is wild. And everyone gets two senators. What am I doing in New York City?
But it's the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
I'm sure Wyoming only gets what, one or two, probably just
I
one.
still don't think it's probably like ratioed appropriately to our population, but like I bet you can't ratio like fewer than one person or less than one person. So it's
Okay. I didn't really have this like this drive to feel connected to Fleur. Fleur, am I saying that right? Fleur.
Fleur.
It's easy to read, but difficult to say. Fleur.
Yeah.
Was there any particular thing you liked or disliked about Fleur, or something that really stuck out to you about her?
Um, she like on the back of the book it says like she's one of the most haunting presences in contemporary American literature, and I was just like, is she? I don't think she was haunting.
She
I
has
don't know.
powers.
Yeah, but
And the person who wrote these notes in the back says Fleur is nature. That's all they said. Fleur is nature. So what does that
I
mean
mean
exactly?
she survived a lot of stuff. She still wanted to kill herself though.
Yeah.
She loved her daughter even though she came about from a very bad situation.
Yes.
I don't know, she still just like lived her life even though like really like bad stuff was happening all the time. If she still like had a purpose and did stuff, which is why like when she like at the end when she put the rocks in her, I was just like, oh gosh. But in the end she ended up doing something that she wanted to do. So I don't know. That was like a moment of weakness or something. Because the rest of the time she was just like, whatever. I'll
Yeah,
deal with this.
like in the end with the trees.
He did. Nanapush alluded to like your parents aren't together or something or whatever, and I was just like, well, where are they now? Because like that wasn't clear, especially after the end scene with all the trees and stuff. Like, where did Fleur go?
I don't know. Yeah,
Where
I
did
don't
Eli
know. Like,
go?
did she just get fed up with how unfair everything was? It's
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, she said after we knew Fleur was gone and there was no telling when or if she would ever return. I don't know. I didn't feel like such a draw to Fleur's character. Unfortunately, I don't really know why. She's obviously sort of like a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather hang out with her than Pauline, but yeah.
And Pauline's telling her story about how she drowned, and men are just always been attracted to her. She just has this look that is very people are drawn into her. Very feminine energy. Strong feminine energy. So I don't know. I didn't really, yeah. Fleur's character, I know she's such a critical part of the story, but I didn't feel like so attached to her. How does Fleur punish the timber? So this question, just reading this, how does Fleur punish the lumber company for daring to strip her land of its trees?
She cuts all the trees down herself and smashes all of them.
Yeah. She says, you think you can do this? I can do it too.
Yeah.
You just wasted a bunch of money.
I don't know if anyone like got hurt or killed from that. But it was pretty interesting. It seemed a little fantastical to me because I think that's a lot of work to saw down a tree, and they said they were very large oaks, so.
And she killed some people, right? She
That's
killed
what I wasn't sure
everyone?
about. It did fall on people, right? So crushed a wagon,
Yeah.
tore into the brush, snapped the limbs, snapped steel saws, and ran through wagon boxes. Yeah, I don't know. Wait, that was when he said go.
One man laughed and leaned against a box elder. Down it fell, crushed a wagon. Pinning beneath their branches the roaring men, the horses. The limbs snapped steel saws and ran through wagon boxes. It's just like she just destroys everything. All the equipment. Sounds like pinning beneath their branches the roaring men. Does that mean all the men? Men and animals were quiet with shock. Fearing a second blow, they lay mute in the huge embrace of the oaks. Eli
Yeah,
said,
It doesn't specifically say that anyone died, but definitely it destroyed a bunch of stuff.
Definitely probably scared the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Like, this woman is a force to be reckoned with. Yeah, that was a pretty incredible final little scene there.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, she broke all the equipment. I'm gonna take away the equipment and I'm gonna chop down the trees. I'll do it so you don't have to. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what she was trying to say. Well, how does Fleur punish the lumber company for daring to strip her land of its trees? Yeah, she damages all their equipment.
And then they're like, come with us, and she's just like, nah, I got my wheelbarrow, like, get away from me. Or it was a cart, sorry.
Yeah, the cart.
Yeah. And that was it. It was just like, I'm not taking your help, I'm not hanging out with you, like.
I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Had it. She was probably just so heartbroken, knowing what was happening to her land, and there's nothing she could do about it.
Yeah.
Okay, and let's just do this. I think I had all the questions. I guess we answered this question about Pauline. Where does Pauline's fascination with religion lead her? You think her beliefs are come from a place of I guess a place of heaven or a place of hell?
I just think she's delusional. Like, she's like the people who live near my, or who are near my work, who like are yelling all the time about, like, that's what she reminds me of. Like, she's just like an extreme person. And maybe there were more of them back in the day, but like, I'm not used to those in everyday life. It doesn't make sense to me.
People who are so
Like,
religious.
blind to your own, well, maybe that does make sense to me. Blind to your own actions, but believing so fervently like something, but then still so blind about what you're doing, like having no introspection.
Yeah.
So I am familiar with that.
Even with a lot of the stuff with like the anti-LGBTQ stuff and everything, you know, people believe so fervently that it's, you know, it's against the Bible, it's against God's teachings. And that's just one of many examples where you're just like, wait a second, what, you know, who said that? And that's not in the Bible, but they believe so wholeheartedly that it is. And, you know, and it gets to the point where the real core values of the religion of Christianity or whatever has become so lost in the sauce because they've become so radicalized that they don't really even see the forest for the trees anymore. It's just.
But I guess that's a good way to describe her. She is radicalized, but to
Totally.
what end? It like doesn't, it's like, what's the point?
She's totally radicalized.
Yeah.
And the little note that this person has is that she's caught between worlds, which is true because she has this indigenous side to her, but then it's clashing with this Christianity side of her, and she lives through others, which is most unnatural.
Oh yeah, that whole like how she got the two to hook up just because she was like, I want to feel like it was just like, what are you doing?
Like she was jealous of Fleur, right?
Yeah, just
So
so let me number one feel through them, but also make him cheat on her. Like it just was like
with Sophie, yeah,
none of this is good.
yeah. Most unnatural, very unnatural, I'd say.
It was yeah, it was
Um,
unnatural.
but it was, it was really interesting to read about her and her sort of downfall throughout the story and how that it could be a reflection on so many other people who were blind to what they were being subjected to, especially if they were in any sort of the government schools, and just sort of this downward spiral from believing in your culture. She was kind of on the fence because she was half and half. But you cannot deny that there was a part of her that was indigenous. She just tried to believe like she didn't have it.
Yeah. And she was real creepy doing it.
And then just changing everything about her. And then still not even being liked, you go to a convent. Not everyone does this, but some people go to a convent to feel a sort of camaraderie with other people. You're there for one reason only, and that's to worship, and you feel a sense of community with other people that you are in the convent with. But Pauline is just so radicalized that even her fellow sisters are like,
Yeah.
pump the brakes. Like, nobody likes you. You're acting insane, and you really don't have to do all of this. Like, you really don't have to do all this. And she's like, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I do. I absolutely do. I need to just suffer at all hours of the day so that I can feel the love of Jesus.
Yeah. Nettles in my neckband. Superior forced me to turn my shoes the right way around, but I let my toenails grow until it ached to walk again.
And she was wearing like a potato sack for underwear and stuff.
Yeah, I put burrs in the armpits. Oh wait, I already read that one. Oh, there's more burrs in the armpits of my dress and screwgrass in my stockings and nettles in my neckband. Ate the smallest bit of bread. Only to sleep on my back with my arms crossed.
You do you, boo boo, but that's weird.
Seems like Superior should have talked to her a little bit more to get to the bottom of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, she probably just has bigger fish to fry than this sort of crazy woman
Probably.
came in late in the game and is just so totally radicalized, denying her indigenous heritage just to feel closer to God. And it being a consequence of white colonialism. Like, that's it. And Louise Erdrich addresses that in a really roundabout way. She never actually addresses it forthright. Like, this is because of white colonialism. No, you have to come to that conclusion, not conclusion, but that discovery yourself. like this is all happening because of this ever present pressure from the outside world, literally, like sort of collapsing and encompassing itself around these people.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the questions that I had. So that's not too bad.
But what's interesting too is that I saw on Goodreads that this is like number 3 in a series.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe
So-
that has something to do with the fact that it's like we're not fully comprehending exactly what's happening. But I heard it's also a standalone, like it's part of a series,
Okay.
but it's a standalone. And maybe that might just be how Louise Erdrich writes her books. Because I think there was another book that I read, The Roundhouse, which is a standalone novel. You can read it and understand what's going on without having to read anything else. But it's also part of a series, so to speak, that has the same characters were relatives, past or present, of those characters. So
Yeah, that's what I think the other. Yeah. That's what I read as well. And doesn't this look like the map we looked at? Kind of.
this is what mine looks like. But that
Yeah.
looks like it could be what
Looks
North
like a
Dakota
grid,
looks like
right?
now.
Farming grid.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the inspiration.
I don't know.
But interesting. It was nice to read more about Indigenous culture. It's the first book that we've read in
Yeah.
this book club about Indigenous culture. So there's that, and we'll see what the future holds.
Sounds good.
Okie dokie. Well, that was fun. It was just the two of us.
Yeah. Thanks for doing book talk.
You're welcome. Are you gonna be reading on the road, you think?
Yeah, I just got it from the library today.
Oh, right, you
so-
said you said you got the ebook, so.
Yeah,
Great.
so we'll see how big it is and all that.
Once I finish this book, which hopefully I'll finish it in the next couple of days, and I'll probably get started on that
Here it
one.
is.
Yeah.
Oh, and did you notice the author that we read died this week?
Yeah, Cormac McCarthy, he passed
Mhm.
away. I did a
Yeah.
little tribute on my Bookstagram.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, featuring The Road that we read back in November. So yeah, I know I saw Stephen King had tweeted about it, and I was like, oh shit. He said, like Cormac McCarthy is one of the most profound and prolific American novelists, and he'd be sorely missed. And I was like, wow, Stephen King says that. That's a pretty big deal.
So Jack Kerouac was born in 1922, so he would have been 101 this year, but he died in 1969 at
Yeah,
47.
I think there's going to be a lot of drug use in this book, so
Oh, yeah?
think so. Isn't that sort of what the Beat movement?
I don't know anything about this book yet, so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know anything about the Beat movement other than this book.
Oh, jazz.
Beat movement is a literary subculture movement started by a group of authors whose work explored and influenced American culture and politics in the post-war era. The central elements of beach culture are the rejection of standard narrative values, making a spiritual quest, the exploration of American and Eastern religions, the rejection of economic materialism, explicit portrayals of the human condition, experimentation with psychedelic drugs, there we go, and
Okay.
sexual liberation and exploration. So basically, like, um, you know, like this is society as we know it, and we want to see if there's other ways of living besides what we know and what we understand. The nuclear family and war, you know, the necessity of war, stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, I'm always interested in hearing people learning about the counterculture and deciding they don't want to live necessarily the way that everyone wants them to live.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will be interested to see.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's a good, like, hopefully it's a
Summer read.
summer read. Yay. I got to figure out what we're going to be reading for July.
Mm-hmm. Well, seeing as I read this in June, I'm behind, I guess, but
yeah, okay. I think I finished this towards the end or towards the beginning of this month anyways. I'm just not reading quite as fast as I used to.
No,
I just think it's, you know, it's just like getting ready for baby and
you got other stuff to deal with.
yeah. Yeah, plus I need to like read books about baby, which I haven't done yet. So
Oh,
I mean, I've read things. I've got, you know, the pregnancy book and what to expect at all the different stuff, but
yeah.
some people read like stacks of books. That's not going to be me. I'm not doing that.
Well,
I'd rather read the books I want to read, but I do need to read a little bit. So
no, it's okay. You'll get it done some
yeah,
point.
I will. All right. Well, it's 10:20. Let's call it a night.
All right. Good
All right.
night.
Thanks, Adeena, for joining me.
Thank you.
All right. I'll see you next month. Maybe.
Sounds good.
Maybe.
Yeah, hopefully.
All right.
Good
Good
night.
night.